Derek had a great line about how his best friend Jacob might come by the free clinic and see Leslie messing with IVs. So Derek throwing that in her face. You would think after Derek throws that in her face that Leslie will definitely refuse Derek having the job. What is up, everybody? It is Monday, which means it is time for another week of Beyond the Gates. And even though there was some characters and some stories on today that weren't exactly interesting, I did actually overall enjoy today's episode. It was honestly carried by, no surprise to anyone that knows that I love me some Lynette. Lynette and Hayley, but also surprisingly Leslie and Derek. Dare I say that Derek may have actually carried an episode? Kind of the way today's episode went. I think I will start with Hayley and Lynette. They are the two characters that intrigue me now that we are getting Hayley's backstory, now that we know she has this history of being a con woman. Today, Hayley was meeting with Lynette to give her paperwork from Bill's office because she got the deal done for Tomas to handle Lynette's case pro bono, which is what Lynette needed from Hayley. Lynette said that Hayley was always good at making things disappear. We got to learn a little bit about Lynette's scam and how that got her in trouble with this case in the first place. They also yapped about Dani's Damsel in Distress Act, and Hayley says she can't keep complaining to Bill anymore about Dani and needs a new plan. So today's episode was for Lynette to try and come up with a new plan to help Hayley with Bill. Hayley had done a lot of the ideas that Lynette was talking about. So Lynette's big idea after hearing about that was that Hayley needs to out Dani Dupree, with Dani's mom going through a health scare with Dani having the cancer gene. Lynette says that if Hayley can't have a health scare, maybe she could have an injury or just a scare in general. What I actually did like about these scenes was that they were having fun together, and it was good to see Hayley have a friend. This is something that's been missing from the Hayley character from Jump. I remember talking about the early days last March, April, May, about how Hayley needs a friend because all her scenes are with Bill. Now that we've started getting Hayley out of just in Bill's orbit, she's become a much better character, and today was a perfect example of that. Hayley was kind of against the idea of a staged mugging because there were a bunch of cameras and the cop that is related to Dani, Jacob, might find something out. But when Lynette saw an area that there's no camera, this is why we talked about in the preview on Sunday, Lynette punching Hayley. So Lynette punched Hayley today to make it seem like she is injured and that it's going to leave a mark and that Hayley can say she was mugged. That seems to be the plan. I had fun watching Hayley and Lynette today. I think they are fun scammers. I love me some good scamming characters on soap operas. That's what I used to say in the early days of Leslie and Eva. And I kind of feel that way again here with Lynette and Hayley. So they were good today. Then Jen had her big idea of getting Derek a job at this free clinic that Leslie is doing. Derek met up with Jen and they talked about him not being able to be a firefighter anymore. And Jan pitched her idea about the free clinic and how Derek could get involved with that and help out a lot with that. But then when Leslie came in, they just don't like each other. Leslie talked about how Thor, calling Derek Thor, charged her the other day, blaming her for Ragnarok or something, some sort of Thor reference. Derek actually got a lot of pot shots in at Leslie today, too. Sometimes Derek's line delivery is a little goofy, but I didn't mind it as much today. I actually enjoyed watching Derek and Leslie have a little verbal spar session because the two characters clearly don't like each other. Derek doesn't want to work for Leslie. Leslie thinks Derek is dumb, which she's not wrong about, and that his interview skills are terrible if this was supposed to be a job interview. Jan was trying to mediate the two, I mean, I never would have thought we'd see these characters in important scenes in half of an episode, but we did today. The show's been using Jan better. I mean, they use Jan better than they use her daughter, Ashley. Derek had a great line about how his best friend Jacob might come by the free clinic and see Leslie messing with IVs. So Derek throwing that in her face. You would think after Derek throws that in her face that Leslie will definitely refuse Derek having the job, but Jan kept mediating. When Leslie left, Derek didn't understand how Jan could be friends with Leslie of all people. But Jan has been very forgiving where Leslie is concerned. Jan talked about working for Vanessa and how the clinic is going to be dedicated to Doug, and she's worried about Derek now that he can't be a firefighter anymore. So Jan pushed hard to get Derek involved in this free clinic storyline. I don't know when we will finally get to the free clinic being built and opened, but Leslie's been building her house by the Dupree house for months now, so it might be quite a while. But they do love to talk about this free clinic storyline. But the Derek and Leslie scenes today were entertaining. We'll circle back to Leslie. Ashley went to work to fill in for someone today and told Shanice that she didn't want to be at home overthinking men and how men are always giving mixed messaging, which Shanice can't relate to with her problems with Ted as of late. Ashley asked Shanice for advice on Grayson getting a call in the middle of them and starting to do stuff in bed and leaving. Shanice thought the obvious answer was that Grayson left to answer a booty call. Shanice thinks that Ashley should just be straight up and ask Grayson. Shanice talked about how she had woes with Ted over the weekend and ended up calling Ted out. I don't think Ashley is the type of person to call Grayson out, I guess, because she didn't seem to want to do that. The Ashley character can certainly be so, on one hand, so meek, but on the other hand, always complaining about something. That's why she's just an irritating character. In came Grayson, though, saying he owed Ashley an apology. Grayson's excuse for the call and leaving was that his mother has Parkinson's and she fell in the shower. I don't know if we're supposed to buy this story or not. There's speculation Grayson could be the impaler. And if he's not, though, what even really is the point of the Grayson and Ashley relationship? So I think it's probably best if the Grayson character ends up being a bad guy, because if not, the Grayson and Ashley storyline is going to quickly become one of the more irritating storylines on the show, down there with how the Ashley and Derek storyline used to be and how Vanessa is for me these days. Right now, though, today I didn't mind the storyline. They might finally be working in something. If they make Grayson more interesting, maybe they will finally accomplish making Ashley more interesting. I wouldn't hold my breath, though. Leslie ended up at the hospital to confront Shanice, chatting about her prank with leaving her panties behind in Ted's hotel room. Leslie says the panties were supposed to be a reminder of her and Ted's adventures. And Shanice said that those adventures are in the past, basically. Shanice was saying that her stunt didn't work, but Leslie was sure that it did and that Shanice was feeling some kind of way. Shanice tried to get through to Leslie's crazy little head that Ted is disturbed by Leslie's actions, but Leslie ignored that and thinks she tapped into Shanice's insecurities. Shanice is saying that Leslie is the one that's desperate in this situation. I think Shanice has been getting the best of Leslie in these confrontations lately. I think Shanice is a character where Leslie's narcissism and her usual delusions and her, trying to attack people with put downs don't necessarily work, and I'm glad that is the case. I did enjoy these scenes between Leslie and Shanice too. Although I don't want it to be where Leslie's continuing to interfere in Shanice and Ted's relationship is the only reason why Shanice is stubborn and wants to actually try and make things work with Ted. But if you're dealing with someone like Leslie, I can see how that would happen. Now, surprisingly, and I wouldn't have said this over the past several months, but the Dani and Andre and Bill storylines today were probably the most boring parts of the show. Dani and Andre were waking up for breakfast together, and Dani had an anxiety dream about being on the runway. They got interrupted by Pamela because that Tatum Stewart person is in the area and wants Dani to be like the brand spokesmodel. So that was their storyline today. I kind of zoned out for most of it. The whole modeling stuff with Dani isn't necessarily the best parts of these episodes when they focus on that. And then Bill and Caroline were together today at the country club. I am glad to see more of Caroline, and I do think she is a good assistant to Bill. But their storyline was less about Bill and more about running into Chelsea and Madison and learning that Chelsea and Madison are engaged and that Chelsea was considering moving to Denmark with Madison. Bill is worried that Chelsea should maybe put the brakes on things because she's moving so fast. Chelsea got offended thinking that Bill thought she was just going through a phase, but that's not what Bill meant. But Chelsea didn't think that Bill was being supportive. Chelsea was saying she isn't moving away for now, but Bill was concerned that she might. It's hard for me, and I don't know how others feel, but I think a lot of people feel similar. It's hard for me to invest in this Madison and Chelsea storyline because for many months, they didn't really get a lot of airtime. And when they did have a story, a lot of it took place off screen, and that kind of hurt the momentum for those two as a couple. The most interesting part of these scenes was towards the end when Bill called Dani wanting to talk about Chelsea's engagement and wanting Dani to talk to Chelsea. But Andre saw that Bill was calling and put him on ignore on Dani's phone, and Pamela saw that happening and told Andre he was doing a good job basically by doing that. As we saw by the preview, I think tensions are going to continue to rise more and more between Andre and Bill this week. So that could get really good. But today they were actually the weaker parts of the episode. I would say even weaker than Derek. So that's something I thought I would never say. But I think Lynette and Hayley probably made the episode for me today. I think Hayley's character in general has become one of the more entertaining parts of the show. And then when Lynette is involved, it's even better because she really interests me as a character. I think the potential for her character could become a really good thing. So a solid enough start to this week for me for the show.